Thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to talk about what we do, because I do love talking about distribution and creative strategies, not just because they're really necessary right now, but because I do think it's how all filmmakers should approach their distribution, to first think creatively about what's best for them before trying to fit into the mold of what the traditional distribution paths have been. So I'm Christie Marchese. I am the founder and CEO of Kinema, and we're a global streaming and screening events platform for independent thinkers, viewers, and filmmakers. My background is a mix of entertainment, social impact, and technology. Before starting Kinema, I started and ran a marketing company called Picture Motion. Picture Motion was an impact agency or a cause marketing company that worked with all the studios and streamers and independent filmmakers to craft we'd call impact campaigns. So understanding the kind of vision for change a filmmaker had when they set out to make that film, and then building a roadmap to meet it. In some cases, when we were working with the distributors, the studios or streamers, it was also looking at how do we use the campaign to elevate the film for awards, or to get people in theaters, or to get people to tune in online. And so Kinema was really born out of that work there. So when we would run these impact campaigns, almost every campaign, of course, had a screening element where we would either produce word of mouth events or grassroots screenings. And over time, the idea was, okay, well, how do we take this big network of physical spaces and screening hosts that we can only bring to our current clients, and make it available for any filmmaker? And then also, how can we automate our process, which is a bit rote, of like sending a contract, sending the film files, collecting data afterwards, and automate it a bit. So, again, to make it easier for more filmmakers to access this. So it's a bit of my background, and I'm sure we'll get into it. But over time, the company has changed a lot as we've been responding to all the different changes in the industry.
Great, great. And so let's dive straight into Kinema and how it works. What is it that what kind of gap does it fill in the market? And perhaps we can talk a little bit about what you felt was missing from the traditional film distribution routes that you felt that Kinema sort of filled.
Sure.
So yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So functionally, we work with your non theatrical rights. So that means showing the film in person or now online, with a screening host, someone who's licensed the film from you or is selling tickets and doing a split, but in a non theatrical setting. So these are schools, churches, yoga studios, bars, social clubs, museums, galleries, anywhere that's a physical space that can show a movie, but isn't a traditional cinema, or they have a virtual representation of that. So that's one type of rights. And then the other rights are your transactional VOD. And that means you can make the film available direct to audience for someone to rent and watch on their own time. And so what the platform does is make it easy to do both of those things. You set up your film as a film profile, you put in your pricing restrictions, so what it should cost for licensing, your ticket minimums, what you want to charge for TVOD, and make it available on our platform, and then promote it to your audience, and we can promote it to our audience. There's a few kind of pillars that are important to know. Like, one is that you maintain control. So you maintain ownership of your film. We do not take any rights. You fully maintain the rights to your film, and you can come and go as often as you'd like. You can come in for one big virtual screening. You can stay on for 3 years. Second is the control piece. You control your pricing. So whatever you want to charge for your film, that's up to you. We can give guidance on how to do so, and recommendations for a rate card, but it's truly understanding who your audience is and what you think they can pay at different windows for your film. We're non-exclusive, so you can work with other distributors, and I think that's important as we dive into distribution strategies. So you can work with an education distributor who's also booking your film in schools. You can also be on Apple and Amazon, while you're also using our TVOD. Fourth pillar is data sharing. So we want to make it, we are as transparent as possible. You get real time updates anytime someone books a screening, or rents your film. For screenings, you'll get email notifications. And for both screenings and TVOD rentals, you'll have an amazing dashboard that you can log into and see everybody that's coming to watch your film. And we also believe in owning your audience as much as possible. What we found in building another platform, especially another streaming platform in this industry, is that we didn't want our filmmakers to become platform dependent. Platform dependence means you can grow your audience, but they're stuck in that space. So your Instagram followers stay on Instagram, your TikTok on TikTok, and YouTube on YouTube. And so we looked at how can we provide a platform to access an audience and a set of tools to make money from your film, but also not make you entirely dependent on us. And that was email sharing. And so now when someone gets a ticket to someone else's screening of your film or rents your film, they have the option to stay in touch with you. We, of course, have to protect user rights and audience privacy so they can opt out. But the idea is that if they want to stay in touch with you, the filmmaker, not us, the platform, they'll share their email directly. And about 80% of our audiences do share their emails with filmmakers. So that's functionally how we work. And then where we kind of fit in with other distribution is we can be a part of that journey. You can do your film festival, then your theatrical, then you can come on to Kinema and do maybe just in person screenings. Then you make it available for virtual. And then maybe you might come off because you have a broadcast premiere and your broadcaster has the rights to that window. And then you can come back on when you're ready to go direct to audience through transactional VOD. The intent is to be as flexible as possible to help you monetize at different windows while building a relationship with your audience. At the same time, we're trying to figure out how to be a successful business so we can be around for a while. So, how do we participate in your success, support your success, and so that we can help the filmmakers that come in after you also be successful? So, that's
Okay.
functionally how we work.
Okay, fantastic. So just to, really sort of simplify it. So for example, at Cine Circle, we run events for filmmakers. So if we wanted to make one event more exciting and add a screening to it, for example, we would come onto your platform, find a film that we think would be great for our audience. We would license the film for that particular screening for those audience members. And then the filmmakers who own that film would get either a cut of that or we would pay them a one-off fee. Um, can you talk a little bit more about so specifically how that works? So would the tickets to this event that I run have to be purchased through Kinema?
You nailed the process. That's exactly it. So there's two options as the screening host. So yes, you might. Well, first let's talk about discovery. You might find out about this in one of three ways. You could just be browsing our site because you're looking for something to book, or the filmmaker could have reached out to you because they've targeted you as like, oh, Cine Circle is a perfect host for us. Like, or three, you might already exist in our database because you've hosted something with us before, and then we would have emailed you saying, hey, because you have hosted a screening of this type of film, you might be interested in this type of film. So there's a few ways you could start that process. And then, yes, everything you outlined was correct. You go to the film page, you put in your organization type and audience size, and you'll be given two options. And those two options are dependent on if the filmmaker enables both. They can enable both or just one. And you'll either pay a licensing fee up front. That fee will be based off of your audience size and type. So a nonprofit for 50 is going to be different than a for-profit for 1,000. Or you can sell tickets. And if you sell tickets, there's a rev share between you and the filmmaker. It's typically 50-50, but the filmmaker determines what that split is. Excuse me. Yeah. So if you are doing an in person event and you've paid a licensing fee, we can't force you to use the ticketing option. So we would love you to. The filmmakers would love you to. We hope that you'll continue to use it so you can build an audience through us. You, as the host, can also export those emails. But at the end of the day, you might have your own system. You might use Eventbrite. You might have a MailChimp account. And so we can't force you to use our ticketing system. So as long as you pay the licensing fee up front, then you can use your own ticketing platform. However, if you choose to sell tickets for your in person event, we will require you to use our ticketing platform so the filmmaker gets a share. And usually to monitor that, we have someone on our team that checks in. So we'll see the request come in, we'll see it's an in-person event and they're ticketing it, and we'll check in a few times. And if we see ticket sales aren't selling, we're like, okay, we want to make sure this you as the host are compensating the filmmaker for showing their film. So we'll check in on your audience size. We also double check the venue before we confirm it. So when you put in the address for your venue, if it's a massive theater and you've only paid for 50 spots, we're probably going to reach out and say, hey, we think you booked the wrong license. If the address is in the middle of nowhere and might be like a rural space, we're going to double check to make sure it's a real event space and not just a random address you put in because you're trying to watch the film because you're really excited to watch it on your own. So we do have some kind of structures in place to mitigate any sort of like fraud or risk for the filmmakers. And to be honest, there really isn't any. Most people are not. Most people are good people and they're not trying to steal from the filmmakers. They're just trying to figure out which thing to book. That's correct.
Okay, that's because I was going to ask so many questions about how you police it to make sure that it actually, somebody doesn't steal things from the filmmaker in that sense. So that's all really interesting. And so you mentioned that the one-off licensing fee is only if you're showing the film for free.
Correct. Yes. Sort of. Each filmmaker is different. So when you pay the licensing fee, like we do request that you have a free event. But for some filmmakers, they're okay if you're selling tickets. So it's fine if you want to pay the licensing fee and then sell tickets off platform, or use it as a fundraiser for your nonprofit. And usually the filmmakers who are okay with that take that into consideration when they set the licensing fee. So maybe instead of like, a small licensing fee of $50 for 25 people, it might be $400 because if you think you're going to monetize their film, then they'll charge a little bit more so they're not missing out on due revenue.
Okay, that's super interesting. Okay. Um, Now, I would love to talk a little bit about what type of films you think would be best for this model. So you mentioned that, in probably most situations, a film will go through a film festival run. It might have a cinema release if they opt in for that, and then somewhere between that and the traditional TVOD and AVOD, that's where sort of you might come in. But you can also be a part of the cinema run, for example, or have it happen simultaneously. But now, what type of films do you feel work best for a platform like Kinema? Are there particular films? Is it documentaries that have specific topics that audiences are interested in, or is it just about anything? What have you found that the biggest successes had in common on your platform?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear that looking at the data, and even if you just go to our homepage right now or look at the upcoming events, social impact documentary performs the best, meaning they get the most events and the most traction and the highest audiences. But the reason why isn't just because it's a social impact op, it's about the type of distribution that we do. And that is having an evangelist or a supporter kind of picking up the mantle of your film and going to their audience. That's a screening host saying, I really care about this film so much that I'm going to organize an event around it and bring my audience or my followers or my interest group to it. And typically that means there's some sort of social issue in it. We don't see the same type of traction for like a general rom-com or like a general horror film. We do have some screening hosts that book in those categories because they more regularly show movies outside of theaters, but it's not the same type of like fervent energy you would get from a super important climate change film or films that have maybe have niche representation. So if there's uh, what's one we have now? There's a film that's about horses, like the spiritual impact of horses. It's a very specific topic and very specific storyline. There's not a lot of films out there like that. And so if you're in that community, this is a really interesting and important film to you. So you want to help bring it to your audience. And so you go that extra mile and you host that screening. And we have like a couple films, I won't list them, but I think are just fantastic, great rom-coms. And they'll book a little bit because they're in the LGBTQ category. And there are hosts that like want to just keep supporting those films. But there isn't a social or political issue or an urgency to having a screening. So they book a little bit less. So yes, social impact, yes, documentary, but also I'd say more niche or specific communities. And we say like niche is strong, not small. It also means that like there's not a lot of competition in that category. And so your audiences who are interested in those topics are really excited to have that type of film available.
Okay. And can you tell me a little bit, just some examples of, companies or organizations that host films through Kinema? So, ones that want to support LGBTQ films, for example, is that, specific organizations? Is it just that random companies, or who might it be?
It's a mix. We've had a little bit of everything. I always tell people like, go to kinema.com and then click on roll over audiences and click on events. And as you roll over each event, you're going to see a bunch of different host types. And it's always interesting to me to see what they are. So yes, we have one. They have such a funny name. So forgive me, guys. It's like Friendly Elder House Services. Like strange kind of name. They used to be called Sage. They're out of Portland, Oregon. They book like every other week. They're amazing. Like anything in the LGBTQ category, and they book a virtual screening regularly. The fun ones that are always a surprise to me are when I see bars. So like when a bar books something, I'm like, wow, I'm so curious. Like, why did they want this particular film? Usually they tend to be kind of impact oriented. So I'm like, okay, whoever owns that bar really cares a lot about this issue. We do get a lot of museums, art centers, and community centers. And those also lend themselves to being using film as a medium to discuss different topics. And then sometimes you'll look and see individual names. And so when you look at the individual names, that means it's a person who really cares about this topic. And if it's an in-person event, you can then go and see what the venue is. And often that means they may be a representative of that venue or they may just have access to it. And that's where we'll see a lot of church screenings. And so maybe not the church itself is officially booking it, but a parishioner of that church is really interested in this topic and they want to bring it to their church, over the weekend. So it really is a mix. The top categories are I'll put it broadly as like arts communities, so the museums, galleries, art centers, education, a mix of college and high school or education organizations, nonprofits broadly, but they break down by different issue areas, from climate change to politics to race to education. And then I'd say businesses are a little bit smaller, but we do get corporate screenings. We've had Wells Fargo, we've had Gap, we've had Bank of America. So we do get big corporate screenings too. They're just far less, and usually they're online screenings for like because their employee base is so distributed, like or smaller screenings at select locations.
Okay. Are the online screenings also hosted by Kinema on the Kinema platform?
Yes, that's correct. So if you go to book a screening and you choose to do it online, you get two options. One is your live virtual, and this was created. We launched the company in 2020, and so when we launched, we all were in person screenings. That was the original idea for the company, and then a pandemic, of course, changed that. So we built the virtual version to mimic the online, or sorry, the in-person experience. So it's scheduled, it starts on time. There's a text room where the audience can chat with each other, and there's the option to do a live broadcast before and after. So you can do a live introduction with talent or a Q&A afterwards. The other virtual option is what we call event VOD, mostly because we don't have a better name for it. But it means like it's an event and it's a hosted screening that you can let your audience watch on their own time or on demand, anywhere between 1 and 30 days. And we have screening hosts that do this where their audiences are not all in one place. So it's difficult to get online or in person. And what works really well is if you do like a 1 day, 24-hour window or a 3 day window and then have a live conversation. So those who can join the live conversation can, but that way someone's not committing like a 3 hour time slot to watching the film live and having a conversation live. So yeah, those are our two virtual options.
Okay, interesting. And in a moment, I'd love to discuss, marketing and really making the most out of the platform. But I've got some questions over here because I'm just so curious. So, in the example of a bar hosting, a screening, um, do they pay more because they're most likely going to be making a ton more money from drinks from the audiences as well? Are there things like that factored in, or is it kind of like a specific percentage that's of the ticket sales that just go back to the filmmakers?
Okay, it's a really good question. So the bar has two options if the filmmaker lets them. So the bar will be considered a for profit. So they're already going to be paying a higher licensing fee. So when they go to book the screening, they're going to have to select what type they are. Of the options, which will be like nonprofit, community group, they'll need to select like for profit business. So that right then their licensing fee is going to be higher. So if they do that, then that's great. They paid a certain amount and they might sell more beers. And that's great. We want these businesses to do well. Anybody that's hosting a screening, whatever the other reason why they're hosting it is to build community, to sell a product, to like advocate for something, great. We want them to do all. I want that bar to sell more beer because of this movie. If they decide to do the ticketing route, then the ticketing is split no matter what at the same rate. So whether you're a nonprofit or a bar, it's still a 50-50 split. And then the minimum ticket size is going to be whatever the minimum is that the filmmaker put into their boundaries, meaning if they're allowing a ticketing event, they can set a floor of what that price can be. So that gets a little tougher with bars. I don't know if I've actually seen anyone do that well, where they sell tickets through us and then do something different. I think it's mostly they pay the licensing fee up front. What I would love to see more is if like they paid that licensing fee up front and then they could sell tickets on a separate platform that include a beer. So get access day, it includes 2 free drink tickets. So the more creative, the better. We don't want to over restrict the experience or make it too difficult because they're already doing something amazing by organizing an event around a film, likely in an area that the film was not going to get a theatrical release in. So how do we make it as easy and appealing as possible is what we're trying to do.
Hmm. And I'm so curious about because in a second I want to take the conversation to filmmakers who put their films up on the platform. How can they find more people to host their films and screen their films? But just from the ones who are already on the platform that perhaps you reached out to and so on. You mentioned that some of them come back and do screenings like every 2 weeks. Um, why why do they do that on your platform, and who do they tend to be?
Yes, they tend to be nonprofit organizations who are using this as like a regular cadence to stay in touch with donors and supporters. I'd say most, and then we look at the hosts as they come in. There's the vast majority of the hosts are coming in because they are passionate about one particular film. I shouldn't say vast majority, more than half. They're really passionate about that one film, and that's what got them in. Then there's a smaller percentage that'll like book a second or third or fourth time. And that's because they'll book in the same interest area. They'll book the same climate change type film or general social impact documentary. And then you get the ones that are much smaller percentage, but they book regularly because they just use this as a way to regularly stay in touch. And right now, when you originally built this, we did envision a way for filmmakers to more directly access these screening hosts. What we found over time is, to be honest, most screening hosts do not want their information publicly available for anyone to pitch them. So, what we've been doing in the meantime is serving as the intermediary. So, once they come in to host a screening of one film, they have the option to receive emails and kind of pitches for new films. And we at this time currently hold that. So every week, our editorial team meets and we look at the new films that have come in, what's going on in the world, any key dates, from Thanksgiving to Christmas to today's Indigenous Peoples Day here in New York or here in the US, and what titles would make sense to promote in the time leading up to that. I do think in the future we will have the ability for hosts to basically make themselves contactable through the system. But at this time, in order to kind of preserve the relationship with the hosts and have them not get inundated with requests, it's still a bit centralized going through us.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's understandable.
I know. I
And
really want to open it up though. I really want this database where like anybody can search. And so I think we're trying to solve that because I think we can get there in a way where where everybody wins.
yeah, I think it's a difficult thing because for those organizations, obviously getting 100 messages every single day from filmmakers all of a sudden would be quite overwhelming. Where they want to pick instead of being pitched, because otherwise everyone is going to pitch every single
Exactly.
organization.
And
Yeah,
it's like there's somewhere like that would, make it easier on us if we weren't doing all the pitching. Like it's less time for us, but we also don't want to risk losing those hosts if they're like, okay, I'm getting way too many messages.
yeah. I think the key selling point for the host is that you pitch them projects that are specifically good for them.
Yes.
And
And
on
by the way, the filmmakers get all the contact info too. So like what we also encourage other filmmakers to do is say, hey, if your film is similar to another film on that platform, go talk to that filmmaker. Like they also have that host screening list. They might be able to email on your behalf.
Yep.
We work with an amazing they're like production company, distribution company, advisors called Tikkun Olam, and they've had a few films on the platform. And what's amazing is they've been really successful with a few films, and then they've taken those strategies and shared them with other filmmakers. They also have the email lists of all the screening hosts that have come in through us, and so now you can work with those filmmakers or hire them to consult on your campaign or help do that outreach for you. So we do try and make those connections too to so you don't have to just work with us. You can work with other filmmakers that have worked with us.
Mhm. Interesting. And I'm also curious, the majority of hosts, um, are they, I mean, whether they're, non-profit or for-profit companies, do the majority of them sell tickets to the events or not?
No, of 80%, and this has been consistent from day one, of all of the events on the platform, 80% are licensed and only 20% are ticketed. So the majority actually prefer it to be free for their audience. They'd rather get people in the door and build community or sell another product than charge their audience to watch the film. So no, and even if they license through us, a very, very small percentage would sell tickets off platform. It's truly people prefer to have it free.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So, in the example of the bar that, is a, for-profit company that's selling, drinks, they could not charge tickets to enter the bar and they could stream it for free and therefore just pay off a licensing fee, right?
Yeah, exactly. They could basically they paid a licensing fee, so whatever it costs them. And one of the bars I'm thinking of in particular, because it's the one I've seen a photo of, they actually have the bar is the physical space inside, and their backyard is where they show the movies, or like their outdoor space is
Right.
where they show movies. So I think it's just a way to get people in on maybe a slower night about something they care about.
Okay. Interesting. And what is, just out of curiosity, like roughly for a bar, like a regular bar, that, might have 50 to 100 people, how much would a licensing fee be for them?
Let me actually, I don't want to misquote myself, so I can tell you exactly. I'm just pulling up our sample rate card. So what we do is we provide a suggested rate card. Basically, so when you put your film on Kinema and you get it all set up, there's a built-in rate card because we want to make sure no matter what something gets charged. But every filmmaker can edit their rate card. The one we put in is a rough estimate of for what we think the different types of hosts should pay based off of the audience size and their organization type for a roughly 90-minute to 2-hour independent film or documentary post theatrical. So roughly, this is it, and at a very accessible price. So I think for a bar that's a business for 25 to 50 seats, it's $200. For
Okay.
51 to 100 seats, it's 350. That's the suggested price that we give to the filmmaker. Now they can also customize at such a like specific level that they can have an option that just says bar. And so they can put specific pricing for what they think a bar should pay.
Okay. Interesting. Do you do you work with cinemas?
Ah, no. So when we yes, sorry, no, but yes. So here's how I'll answer that. The rate that we would the licensing or sorry, the rights that we work with are technically non-theatrical. That means all of our spaces, when they're booking a license from the film, they're signing essentially an agreement that's there. It's for non-theatrical purposes. That said, we sometimes get screening hosts who are individuals, who are people who sign that agreement, but they want to show it in an actual theater. So I think if you go to our event section, you'll probably see some. In that case, we're actually not doing the deal with the theater. We're doing it with the individual. They just happen to be also renting a small theater. So we don't do traditional theatrical. We don't license directly with theaters. However, we do have screenings at theaters when there's a third party host booking that non theatrical license.
Okay. Is there a reason why you specifically don't do theatrical at all?
It's a whole other beast. Like we would love to. Actually, if theaters would if theaters want to book films for one night showings, directly from the filmmakers, yes, please. They would have to pay the licensing fee or sell tickets. And then if they're going to sell tickets, they typically do it through their own platform because
Right.
that's how their audiences are used to buying them. They're going to go to amctickets.com, AMC Theaters, or Fandango or movie tickets, whatever their preferred ticket buying platform is. And so then it has to be synced up to that system. That's a different type of revenue management. So when you have a theatrical booker or theatrical distributor, they're handling all of that. They know what screens your film is on, how much revenue is coming in from each theater, and then each individual ticket sales, and that they can receive the revenue from that. Our system, the theater would have to use our ticketing system for that to be automated, or we would then be acting as a theatrical distributor and having to monitor those payouts, which we're not set up to do.
Okay. Right. That makes sense. And do filmmakers ever get involved with the marketing of of the screenings? So there's a host, they do a screening. Traditionally that host would be in charge of their own marketing, to either sell tickets or so on. But do filmmakers ever get more involved in the actual promotion of those events?
Yeah, I think so. I think I say, well, first, actually, filmmakers often host their own virtual screenings too. Like they do their
Right.
own first one. They'll do a big live virtual or maybe a weekend run so they can really understand how the platform works
Okay.
and they know what it's like to market. And then, yes, they do get involved, but I would say more on a social media passive front. So we encourage their screening host to promote the event, of course, online. We can send a toolkit for how to promote your event. And if you tag the filmmakers or tag the film, you'll likely get a repost or if you do a collaborative post. But they don't think they get involved on like a granular level. They're not doing, if there's a screening, somewhere in Pennsylvania and the filmmakers live in California or the UK, they're not actively marketing locally in that community. It's really more of a digital support play.
Yeah. Okay. Now this is where I'd love to jump into some of the marketing aspects of it, because I can now see that this is definitely a really, really great step for most, filmmakers. Most indie filmmakers who self-distribute their films, and they say have it released on Amazon Prime that pays, like 1 cent per every hour that the film is screened. They might get like a couple million minutes streamed in the first, couple of months, and that's going to make them the same amount that they would get off a one-off licensing fee here in a bar, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that's, that's really great in terms of revenue for filmmakers here. And so I guess I want to divide the conversation into first for films who are making, those social impact type films. And we can talk a little bit about that. And then moving on to the ones that, still perhaps could utilize the platform, but it could be a little bit more difficult, such as just a normal horror film or whatever that might be. So starting off with those social issue type films, when filmmakers are, before the film is even finished, if they want to, think about Kinema being a part of their distribution strategy, what should they be doing and how should they be going out to find, hosts for future screenings?
All right, so it's a big question. So first and foremost, you should be thinking about your audience and distribution strategy at production stage. And this is a big change and shift in thinking, at least in the U.S., for what filmmaking and film distribution looks like. And that's just a product of where we're at from technology and industry shifts. So it used to be that you would make your film, independently finance it, take it to market, hopefully get a distributor. But at least there are many windows in which you could make money. You could do VHS. There was still broadcast. There was still some theatrical. As audience attention has diversified so much to the point where we all have our own personal television feeds coming in through Instagram and TikTok, it's much harder to reach audiences, to market to them, and to get them to go do something outside of their phone and their home. So it's just difficult for everybody. So I think we first have to acknowledge that like the times have changed and you have to change with them in some way. And to be a filmmaker, an independent creator that wants to make a traditional film as a feature length film, not at the pace that creators make it, meaning you want to take a couple of years to follow a story or to get the script and raise the money and shoot it, get everything, and then go to market. You're on a long journey here. And now in that journey, it has to include a budget for marketing and distribution, at least 20%, probably 50%. And the reason why is you should be putting together a bespoke plan for what it would look like to release your film on your own as your priority. That gives you a lot of power and autonomy and negotiating backing when you then go to a film festival or when you then go to pitch it to the streamers. Because now you're saying two things: I've raised this money, so I have money to support my own distribution and marketing. And then second, I've done the research on what this is going to go to. I know specifically who my immediate audience is. I know where they are. I know who they listen to. And I know how I would roll out my film because I've already done my plan A. And so that's the stage in which you would start thinking about using a platform like ours. But it's not just about us. It's about just really knowing like who that audience is and how you're going to reach them. And for some films, like we do work well. Like it does make sense to use our type of platform. And for others, like you said, like a general rom-com, it might not make as much sense to do hosted screenings. But you still could do a few. You could look at doing influencer screenings. So maybe the talent in the film is really the part of the marketing plan. And so your marketing budget is going to support a publicist and a press team to support the release around the film and the actors. And the actors themselves, if they have a large online following, they can host their own screenings and they can help bring an audience that way. So that's my long way of saying it's not just about like thinking about when to work with us. It's thinking about having a budget for your marketing distribution, have a very clear idea of who your audience is and how you're going to reach them. And then once you're on that, once your distribution options start to reveal themselves, you'll understand how much you're going to lean into your own plan and how much you have opportunity from other partners. So not every film needs to get into Sundance. And even those that did have not sold. There's something like 15,000, 16,000 films applied for Sundance last year. Of that, like 1% got in, and of that, even smaller percent have distribution. I've seen some incredible films that have won audience awards all year long and still can't get distribution. But they have raised money and they have a plan in place in which they can reach their audience directly. So, sorry, that's my long answer.
Okay. I want to touch upon a subject which is, perhaps not super related to Kinema, but something that I think filmmakers are really interested in. So am I. So I have a performance paid marketing background outside of the film industry. And as I came into the industry, I realized that most people who spend money on marketing waste it, meaning that it's not actually profitable marketing. Which means if they spend £10,000 on ads, they don't end up making £10,000 or more in sales. So you mentioned having a budget for paid marketing. If we think about the different ways in which you can spend money for marketing, whether that's running paid social ads or Google ads or billboards or, hiring a PR company, whatever that might be, do you have this sort of gut feeling, at least for certain types of projects, what type of paid marketing would actually give people the best return on their investment?
Yes, but it depends on the film and the filmmaker. And so the first thing we ever ask before putting together a spend for that marketing budget is okay, so you have four options. You must choose one for your goal. Do you want to make money? Do you want to make an impact? Do you want to build your career? or do you want your film to find audiences? You can only pick one of those because what you pick will become your North Star, and that's going to determine what you spend those marketing dollars on. So if it's impact, you're going to spend that on an impact producer, someone who really knows how to reach these audiences, craft the message, book the screenings. If it's your career, you're going to spend it on a publicist that's going to help you do the right film festival, or sorry, festival coordinator to help you do the right film festivals, and a publicist to get you into the trades. If it's audience, it might be performance marketing. You're just going to figure out the right spend to just get people to watch it. You're going to release it on YouTube. You're not doing it to be a revenue driver, and you're going to spend, a few dollars a day and really optimize your ads and work with somebody who knows how to change that in real time. And then if it's revenue, you might be working with a sales agent and spending your time not releasing it and really trying to get a deal. And then if that deal doesn't come out, look at all these other avenues in which you can spend money to make money. So there isn't a single answer. And I actually do believe that some paid marketing makes sense, paid digital ads make sense. But you're temporarily buying someone's time to do that. You're not necessarily like build, and it could take many, many hits for them to pick your film if that's the first time they're hearing about it. I think the number used to be a consumer needs like 7 strong touch points before they make a purchasing decision. And now it's like 20 or something. And so even if I see an ad for a film 5 times, if I have no cultural context for it, if I didn't hear about it in theaters or none of my friends recommended it, it might be wasted dollars. It might be wasted ad dollars. Although you know this world better than I do. I can just tell you that when we've done paid advertising campaigns, we found a way to make it work and to like actually make a little bit of profit on it, but it's a lot. You're spending a lot to like maybe just make a tiny bit of profit. We'll say we had one filmmaker we discussed where we met with, he spent about $100,000 on digital ads, but he did it like $10 and $20 at a time. Like he spent so much money, but he found a way to be profitable and it was worth it because he made 200K back from that. So he had a net profit of 100K. So I totally think it does make sense and it is possible to make money off of your digital ads, but you either have to have the right partner doing it for you or be very, very patient and be willing to constantly optimize and change those ads.
I would love to talk to that filmmaker.
Yeah, I can introduce you.
I'll ask you about them after. Okay, well, that's all really, really interesting. So, coming back to finding hosts for for your particular film. So, at what point should you start reaching out to them, for example, and how should you start reaching out to them to build that personal connection with them, so that eventually, when the film is out and you can put it on Kinema, you can then get in touch with them?
Oh, no, it's a really, really good question. And this is where I don't know if there's a perfect answer to it. It might be different for every film, like everything is. We want to walk this line of like notifying the right audiences or the right people that reach your audiences early enough. So you're not just getting the, hi, here's my film. You don't want to send an email. It's like, here's my synopsis and here's all my awards and here's why you should care. And also I need $100 from you. And this is the first time you're ever hearing about me. No one's going to read the email because it's too long. And second, they don't know who you are. But you also don't want to come in too early and then bug the hell out of people who are like giving them nonstop updates that they didn't ask for. So I think it's finding the right kind of science and art in between. What I have encouraged filmmakers to do is start that spreadsheet early. Like start figuring out who that is, who's going to host a screening and why. And you can do that by looking at other films that are similar and just running searches. You can ask ChatGPT, show me where this film has screened, like all across the US or Canada, or the UK. And you can start a list from there. Then you can also reach out and say, hey, I just want to let you know about my film. I thought this might interest you. Here's a trailer. You're just kind of, you're not asking anything, you're giving. Then you can ask, like, may I add you to my email list? Or if you're interested, follow me on Instagram and start to like breadcrumb some of that out over time. It's just in the way we have to reach people today, you really don't have the option to go to what used to be like a one to many medium, meaning like just the New York Times, just Jimmy Kimmel, or just the late night shows or the morning shows. Like you have to reach people over time in 100 different ways. And so if you can, and you have the time and patience and resources, find a way to make that list of who the target screening hosts are. Invite them to learn about your film by sending them a piece of content that's just you're sharing with them. See if you can add them to your email list or invite them to follow your socials, and then build interest and curiosity. And before you put in that ask of saying, hi, now would you like to have a screening of my film? And then even though I phrase it, I ask, remember, it's always an offer. You're offering them the opportunity to bring this film to their community for the small price of a licensing fee that sustains the filmmakers and creators that are making these wonderful stories. So I think it's also getting that pitch just right.
Okay, interesting. And now, okay, so I can totally see how all of that can work very well again for those, social impact, documentaries and films and so on. Um, but I reckon that probably 90% of the people who are listening, actually, it might be a bit of a breath of fresh air because in every single other area of distribution, we're told that documentaries are doing really, really badly. So it's nice to see this one area where it might
For
actually do
acquisition,
well.
they're
Yeah.
definitely doing terribly. It is really hard. It's almost impossible to sell anything, which is why we see them doing well through these other mediums. It is the only
Yeah.
option.
Exactly. But now for everybody else who has made, a horror film, a thriller, a rom-com, films that don't have a specific topic, that already has a community, based around it. How can those filmmakers, find hosts? And have you seen any films on the platforms with those types of genres that have done well?
What I would look at doing then is not going the traditional host route that a documentary has done. I'd look at leaning more into influencers and having your own screenings. So every film should have some sort of windowed release. And by windowing, we mean, not your traditional format of go into a theater for, 60 days and then there's a gap of another 60 days before it goes online. It's figuring out the way in which to release your film. For your audience to pay who will pay the most at each window. So, do you have an audience? I'm taking this like off of Kinema and go to talk more about general distribution. So if you have an independent horror film or you have an independent rom-com, so first know your goals. Are you doing it for revenue? Are you doing it for your industry accolades to build your career? First, be very clear about that. Then second, when you look at your audience, you're like, okay, where is my audience and who can pay at what point? Is this a film that can do a theatrical release? Like if you were to run your marketing and distribution, can your film do that? Is there enough people in certain areas who are going to come out and pay $16 and a babysitter fee or a gas or whatever it is? Then there's your next window. Is there enough audience that would pay for a premium VOD price or a transactional VOD price? Will they pay $20 to see my film? Then there's your like standard TVOD. Will they pay $4.99? Then there's the who will only watch if it's free on YouTube. So I think being really thoughtful about what those audiences are for your film all along the way. I think what we've seen is there's a lot of horror films that do great on the AVOD platforms like and AVOD and fast channel platforms like Tubi and Pluto, YouTube, through Roku. So I would look at companies like Film Hub and other aggregators to see how you get on those platforms. So and then what you can use us for is more the marketing side of it. So do a big virtual premiere. Let's say you finish your theatrical or you skip a theatrical. This is your big online premiere with all of the talent. And so you use us for that. Set the date and time, promote the heck out of it, do some merch giveaways, do some fun stuff during it to build buzz around it. Then look at who's the talent in the film or if there's any um, creators or influencers, I should say, in that area that might promote it. So give them their own link and their own virtual cinema. And so all the top billed actors in the film, but this is before you go to your next TVOD window, they get their own virtual cinema. They get 50% of every watch that they drive to watch of their own film. You're basically creating a new back end for them. Um, and then the last bit would be look at the influencers in that issue area. So if not issue area, like topic, are there horror bloggers or horror influencers? Make a clipping package for them. Invite them to a virtual screening to watch it live with you, or give them a link to watch it, and then give them a clipping package to promote the film. And you could drive back to your TVOD release on us. And the reason why you would do a TVOD release with us as a non-social issue documentary, as a non-social issue non-documentary film, is because you're going to get paid in real time. So immediately you can see if your campaigns are working. You'll get paid same day for every rental that comes through. You're going to collect the email addresses of those individuals that are coming through. And again, you can set your own price. Whereas if you're going to go on Amazon or Apple, which I still love and you should do, they're going to put you at a set price of $4.99. So there is still a way to release through us that's not through your traditional hosting mechanism, but using instead the other features on the platform that are better lend themselves to the audiences that you have for your film.
Okay. Interesting. If we run paid ads to your platform to sell, for example, for people to buy or rent the film, can we put like a meta pixel or something on your platform at this point?
It's
to
a
track
great
conversion?
question. So, yes and no. We're trying to play around with this because there are so many weird rules right now about data sharing. So, yes, we're doing this for someone right now. We have to update our terms and conditions to make sure we're completely above bar on everything when it comes to pixel tracking. So, but yes, like either in the very, very short future or in the longer future, you can do so. Because exactly your point, you need to know those ads are performing.
Yeah, because that's the thing that, for example, I'm still shocked that Vimeo, for example, still does not do this, and it's like, okay,
It's because
why?
'cause you know what? I think there was a small streaming platform that got sued like 2 years ago, like, because,
Right,
like, they
everyone's a
didn't
little
have their
scared.
update from the head of Pixel, their terms and conditions weren't updated, and it was some, like, activist, like, person, not like a social activist, like a tech activist that was trying to, like, put them under. So it was like we all have been scared, and we're global,
Right.
and so because we're global, we don't know and for the geo blocking we allow is based off of the filmmaker's preferences. So if your film only wants to release in the US, you put that geo block up. But if it's global, and you have a global audience and you're tracking that globally through a pixel, each country has their own rules around it. So
Yeah.
we're wading into that carefully.
Yes, I can see why. Okay. And now I'd love to just have a chat about some of the perhaps specific case studies or examples of films that have done really well on your platform. Do you have any, like, off the top of your head, where like this is one of the best performing films that either generated the most revenue or had, the most impact? What were those films that have done the best? And what have the filmmakers done? If we can talk, about just one or two specific examples and walk me through what the filmmakers have done to make that film a success, that would be great.
Yes. So first, I'll say we try and publish as many of these case studies as possible. So I'll give you a few of the examples now, but I'll in case I mess up any of the data. We have a Substack. If it's just kinema.substack.com, you can go and find some of these. And exactly to your point, there's case studies based off of what is better, what did really well at impact versus revenue. So the ones that have done really well with revenue, and I always give this caveat, unless it's published on our Substack, most filmmakers do not give us permission to publish their exact numbers until like far after the campaign's done. But I'll speak to the films I'll talk about on the revenue side have all made like over 200K through us. And so those films, they have a few things in common and a few things different. So the one thing that they have in common, a few things that they have in common, very, very dedicated filmmakers. These filmmakers are entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial and they don't even know it. They're looking at running their film with a clear business model. And whether the intent was impact, the intent was revenue, they were very, very clear about their goal. You're going to hear me say some of the same things over again on this podcast because they are true. Second is they're very, very clear about their audience. They were very specific about their audience. They could describe them to me. So this might be um, women who make investments or women who work in banking, like very, very specific. They know who they are and where they are and how to get to them. Um, the one thing that is different, oh, sorry, three, and they set the right price point for them. And so I have the two I always love to compare because they have the first two things in common, but the second two things not. When it came to pricing, one is charging like $50, $100, $200 for a screening. Another is charging like $1,000 or $5,000 for a screening because they have different audiences that can pay different prices. And one's going to have a lot more screenings and one's going to have a lot less, but they're still going to achieve similar revenue goals because they knew exactly who they wanted to show it and what they can pay. Um, the other difference between these two is that one had zero audience to start with, like none, starting from scratch. The filmmakers were known enough, like they had some mediums that they communicate to their audience, but not massive. And then the other one had a massive email list. Like they'd had millions of people see their past films and they had tracked those and collected email addresses. So they had a good base to start off of. And so for the one that did not have a good base to start off of, it took longer. It took being patient. It took a theatrical release. It took doing only in person screenings, really building out that word of mouth over a year before traction really started to make pace. And then for the other one, because they had an email list of people already aligned and interested in what they're producing, they booked like 100 events as soon as they sent an email out. That group was ready to go. So, yes, there's some common things of like super entrepreneurial, good strategy, know your goals, know your audience, like get the right pricing. Um, and then there's one that we don't talk about as much, and that's the building partnerships. And those can be screening hosts. It could be it's organizations and businesses and allies who are amplifiers, so that you're not just doing it on your own, especially if you're not like film that had the big email list and you're starting from scratch, you got to get the name out there somehow. So it is doing some word of mouth screenings. It is doing partnership promotions. It's finding ways for it to incentivize people to help promote and support your film. And then we've had other ones on the impact side that they look at more fundraising. So this one, I think the report's up. So this one's called Women in the Wind, and they did an amazing job of just doing their own event VOD window. So they set a 30-day window where the only way you could watch the film was through us, and at a higher ticket price point. I think it might have been like 10.99 or 19.99. And they were relentless. They had like a pretty decent following on social media. They had a good brand. The film's fantastic, but the filmmakers were very smart and strategic, and they went partially through their own audience, but also building outside of that. I can't remember exactly how much they made, but I think they were one of our this year, like I think they might have been this year our top performing single event, at like tickets in the tens of thousands of dollars, like for one virtual event. Um, and then the last two I'll say are fundraisers. So similarly, they used a TVOD window where they would just do a window for 3 days or a week, and they positioned it as a fundraiser. That the only place you can watch the film is here, and 50% or 100% of your dollars are going to go to one of these organizations. And both of those this last year did really well. Sorry,
Okay.
that's a lot.
No, that's super interesting. You mentioned that one of the filmmakers or some of the filmmakers, they had good social media followings and engagement, and they leveraged that. And I'm wondering on that note, do you, because when you're thinking about your social media strategy, I mean, you can do all three, but generally speaking, you can either promote the film via your personal social media accounts, so really building your personal brand, and me as ZV would be promoting the film on my own channels as your production company, or creating specific social media accounts for the film itself, where it can be really targeted to the film, but with every single film you have to start from scratch. Do you have a particular one that you think is the most useful for filmmakers and the one that they should focus on the most?
It's such a good question, and I wish I had a better answer, so I'll give more like my personal opinion on this one. So at my last company at Picture Motion, we used to do a lot of these social media campaigns and help build up the social media profiles of either the filmmaker or the film or the production company. And when I worked at Participant Media, I ran digital strategy for social impact team, so it was building up Facebook pages, email lists. So I think a lot about this. And there isn't a perfect answer. I think it comes down to what do you want to maintain, because I do think every film needs to have some sort of social presence online just so people can tag it. And at the bare minimum, it says like the release date or the website because everyone's so socially driven. So yes, I do think every film needs to have their own social media presence. Updating it can be a lot. I get it. But if you're going to run ads, like you probably want to run it through the film. It's just a cleaner experience. If you're looking to build up your following, like something that's long term and organic, and you're really planning to do regular communication and provide actual entertainment, because think about it's Instagram is entertainment now. I was reading some data today that it's like at least 80% of watching that happens on Instagram is no longer personal. It is professionally created creator content. It's like, and I read somewhere else it was like 97%. So it is an entertainment platform. So, and a television platform. So, if you are going to build a profile on there, are you going to be entertaining and are you becoming a creator yourself? And then the answer to that would be okay, then the answer to your question would be, are you going to do that through your personal or your company account? Again, bare minimum, have a company account. It shows you exist. You can always like buy some followers at the beginning to like get it boosted, and they'll dissolve over time. So, but if you really want to build a following in a meaningful way, then you need to whichever one you want to do that under, be willing to create a decent amount of content and provide entertainment and drive curiosity for your follower fan base. But I don't know. What do you think? I mean, you do this too.
Yeah, I mean, and I've been really back and forth between this. I believe that for most filmmakers to be successful, each of their next films needs to be better and earn more revenue than the last. And I've seen a lot of filmmakers where every single film kind of does the same, if not even
Mm.
less and less and less. And I think that's because, we've seen like, especially, I mean, it's not as common now, but especially when we were actually all still on Facebook. I remember that there was like a Facebook page for absolutely everything in your life, every new film, every new crowdfunding campaign, everything deserved a new Facebook page. And we were continuously building the following up from scratch constantly.
Yep.
And I think that now there has to be the biggest thing that the filmmakers can leverage is building their own audience. And I think it's really difficult to do that if you're creating a new social media account with every single film, meaning with every single film, you're starting with your audience from scratch.
Yeah.
I think people don't really like company accounts, even when they have a lot of followers. I mean, at Cine Circle, we have 30,000 followers on Instagram. That means less than 1,000 followers on my own personal account in
Hmm.
terms of reach, engagement, traction. So I do believe that for me, the most important thing that any filmmaker can do is to develop their own personal brand and have that brand be shown online through a social media account. And that's not necessarily TikTok or Instagram, right? Get on LinkedIn.
Yes, agree.
Yeah. So
I
that's
think
my
I think you're totally right. And you said the key word, which is like, what are you creating a brand around? Like LinkedIn's great. Substack. There's a huge like film stack community. TikTok, Film Talk. I was meeting with as I said, I sound like an old person. I was meeting with a Gen Zer the other day, and she was explaining to me like the subcultures of remixing within Film Talk. It's a whole nother space. But like she's building up her profile within. I can't even see it. I don't get that algorithm. So there's different sub communities to build your brand in. But the brand piece is interesting. Like if you want your production company to be like A24, then yeah, you would focus on that. But you need a strong brand strategy for people to be interested in following that. When you're right, like people are more interested in following people. Their trust is down and people trust government less, they trust businesses less, they trust brands less. But weirdly, we trust people more. I think the card of the creator economy has like driven that because we now trust people's faces telling us things vertically in our phone. So I guess then as a filmmaker, can you do that? And not every filmmaker can. So yes, LinkedIn, is film like Substack, all those other mediums work as well.
Mm. Final question for you. Very open-ended, broad question that I like to ask. I think the film industry is constantly evolving. I feel like the pace at which changes are coming is becoming, faster and faster and more frequent. You have streaming platforms that rise and fall very, very quickly now. Filmmakers are struggling, I think, just as much as they always have in terms of making profitable films. What do you think the future of indie film is in the next 5 years or so? And what do you think is the most important thing that filmmakers should focus on right now if they are producers making feature films?
Few things. I think two different questions. I'm going to forget one of them halfway through the first one. Okay, so I think we should be paying attention to. So I think the future of the film industry looks like is it's going to become closer to the creator economy than it is because you have this next generation of young people growing up with social media, like being social media and YouTube natives and having direct connections to their audiences and seeing results in real time. So you put out a piece of content, you see how your audience responds, you iterate on top of that, you build a following, you build characters, you build stories. But a lot of these filmmakers and a lot of these creators and talents that are on camera, they're actors. They want to be in the entertainment industry. And a lot of the top 1% of creators are launching studios now. They have studio spaces, they have teams, they have got brand deals. And so I think we're going to start to see that come over into the traditional film space more. Their budgets are going to be smaller because they're used to producing like nothing. Their teams are going to be smaller and they're going to have a really clear understanding of their audience. And that's going to put them in a great position to come in for a more traditional deal. Look at Heavy Shovel Productions. They've been doing this and documenting their journey the whole way. This generation also shares everything and brings you along for the ride. It's not, I kept my process secret and now it's out there in the world. Look at Creator Camp. This is a group of YouTubers who have launched a film production and distribution company. They're starting to help distribute films through their network, through traditional means, or through means like theatrical, but understanding the audience because the YouTube creator has been the director of the film. So I think it's really important we pay attention to that, and there's going to be like a merging that's happening there. I guess that's the future and what people should be paying attention to. Did I merge the two questions? What was the
Yeah,
other
I think you
question?
did.
Okay.
I think you answered both of them in one. Yeah.
Okay, great. That's what we're
Yeah.
paying attention to, and that's what we're seeing. I'm seeing the difference already. Like at Sundance, there's an increase in creators that are attending.
Yeah.
So yeah, pay attention to that.
Yeah. Very interesting. So I'm gonna add some links to Kinema and so on into the notes here in the podcast. So everyone who's watching or listening right now, you'll be able to see that in the description. But yeah, just to finish off, how can filmmakers connect with you and Kinema? Who do you want to hear from the most, and how can they connect with you?
Sure. You can find us at kinema.com. It's like cinema with a K. You can reach our whole team, if you're a filmmaker, at films@kinema.com. You can reach me directly at Christie@kinema.com, Christie. I'm much slower than the films at email, mostly because I get to have great conversations like this. And we want to talk to anyone and everyone, to be honest. Like we're paying attention to, we talk to creators looking at like getting into the film space, and we talk to people that have been in the industry, like running studios for years. Like I want to understand and talk to everyone from the full spectrum of what the entertainment industry looks like. So reach out to us.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This has been such an interesting conversation, and I'm a really big believer in the fact that in order for filmmakers to start making more profitable films, there needs to be more innovation on the distribution side. So I'm so glad that that's exactly what you're doing here. So thank you for sharing this conversation with me, from telling us so much about the platform, and yeah, hopefully we've inspired a couple of filmmakers to try something new with their next film.
Yeah, no, ZV, thank you so much for the opportunity. And they were really great questions.
Great, thank you.